Denver International Airport glimmered under the early morning sun, its runways stretching like silver ribbons across the Colorado plains. Passengers moved with the casual urgency of those who believed that life could always wait for the next coffee, the next flight, the next destination. Families bustled with luggage, business people typed furiously on laptops, and travelers, earbuds in place, gazed absent-mindedly at the clouds through towering windows. Amelia Phoenix Carter walked past the terminal gate with measured steps, her black uniform crisp pilot wings shining against her chest. She wasn't just any pilot. She was a quiet anomaly in the aviation world, young, brilliant, and unshakably disciplined. Those who had flown with her knew she was meticulous, calculating, and on rare occasions almost eerily calm. Those who hadn't didn't know the half of it. Her co-pilot Jeremy was double-checking instruments, murmuring quietly under his breath, "Clear skis. Routine flight. Nothing out of the ordinary." Amelia gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, but her eyes flickered to the radar screen. Routine flight or not, something tugged at the back of her mind, a shadow she couldn't yet name. Her hands moved over the buttons and switches with practiced fluidity, almost dancing over the controls. Years of training had conditioned her for this, yet instinct whispered, "Something is coming." She pushed the thought aside, unwilling to betray the unease that prickled at the edge of her consciousness. The passengers began boarding. There was the elderly man with a cane, carefully navigating the aisle, a young couple in their honeymoon glow, and the rowdy group of college students laughing too loudly, trying to ignore the boarding call. A child in 18A clutched a stuffed bear as wide eyes scanned the cabin like a tiny radar. Amelia caught his gaze for a fraction of a second and gave a reassuring nod. In that instant, a responsibility heavier than gravity settled onto her shoulders. 200 souls depended on her, 200 lives she couldn't afford to miscalculate. The engines roared to life, vibrating through the metal frame of the aircraft. Amelia's hands, steady as stone, ran through the final pre-flight checklist. Outside, the sun glinted off the polished wings, reflecting golden streaks onto the tarmac. There was something poetic about the moment, the ordinary beauty of flight, the delicate choreography between human skill and machine precision. Yet Amelia couldn't shake a fleeting shadow of apprehension. Something in the air felt wrong. The wind shifted suddenly, as if whispering a warning across the Colorado plains. As the aircraft taxied toward the runway, Amelia's mind drifted to her past. She remembered the secret flight simulations, the late nights spent mastering maneuvers that civilian pilots would never attempt, the hidden corridors of the Air Force's advanced training programs where she had honed her skills in total secrecy. She had flown high-performance jets, evaded obstacles no one else could, and survived situations most could only imagine. And yet, as she guided this commercial plane toward the open sky, the thought struck her cold. All that preparation, all that hidden talent might be tested today in ways she had never anticipated. The tower gave clearance. Engines screamed, brakes released, and the plane surged forward, its massive body trembling as it gained speed. Inside, passengers were either unaware of the physics in motion or blissfully distracted by the hum of conversation. Flight attendants moved down the aisles with practiced smiles, distributing snacks and beverages, chatting lightly with passengers to keep spirits high. Amelia felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, not from fear, but from the thrill of control, from the intimate understanding that she was the architect of hundreds of destinies, if only for the next few hours. As the wheels left the runway and the plane lifted into the clear blue sky, a subtle blip appeared on the radar. It was almost imperceptible, a faint flicker among the usual clutter of signals. Amelia squinted, adjusting the screen, tracing the anomaly. It wasn't weather. No storm systems were scheduled, no turbulence warnings issued. Something else hovered on the edge of detection, a presence, almost too small to notice, yet undeniable. A chill ran down her spine, though she forced her face into a mask of calm professionalism. Co-pilot Jeremy glanced at her, brow furrowed. "Anything?" he asked, voice low, cautious. "Nothing yet," Amelia replied, though her fingers hovered near the communication panel, ready to alert ground control. She ran a mental checklist: radar anomaly, engine stable, altitude nominal, no visible external threat. Everything should be routine, but Amelia knew better than to trust appearances. In her experience, the ordinary often masked the extraordinary, the danger that arrived quietly, unnoticed, until it was too late. She reached for the intercom to announce the flight path, the smooth ascent, the expected time of arrival, but her hand froze mid-motion. Another flicker on the radar, stronger this time, closer, moving in formation, almost watching. Her pulse quickened imperceptibly. This was no bird, no drone. The shape was precise, aerodynamic, military grade. And then a voice, faint but distinct, broke through the cockpit static. "Phoenix." Amelia's breath caught. The single word reverberated in the cabin, though Jeremy heard nothing. Her eyes widened. How could anyone know her call sign? She hadn't used it in years, except in certain classified simulations in restricted communication channels. And yet here it was in her cockpit, drifting across the airwaves like an omen. She forced her jaw to relax, heart hammering against ribs. Was it a test, an accident, or a warning she wasn't prepared for? Below, the mountains stretched endlessly, their peaks glittering under the morning sun, innocent and serene. Inside the cockpit, tension hung like a storm cloud. Amelia toggled switches, adjusted altitudes, tried to stabilize the faint disturbance. She had faced many crises in her career, but the combination of unseen eyes, unannounced signals, and an inexplicable knowledge of her secret identity made this flight unlike any other. Every passenger's life now rested not only on her skills, but on her ability to decipher an invisible threat. She inhaled deeply, grounding herself. Amelia Carter, call sign Phoenix, pilot extraordinaire, had never faltered when stakes were high. This flight, her routine flight, was about to become anything but ordinary. Outside, the world continued in oblivious motion, but inside the cockpit something was stirring, something that would change the course of 200 lives before the day was done. The engines hummed steadily, but Amelia's instincts screamed. The first ripple of the storm had arrived, unseen but undeniable, and she had to be ready. Her eyes flicked back to the radar. Another faint blip appeared, moving faster now, closing in. She swallowed hard, adjusting controls, calculating trajectories, scanning the horizon for anything the eye could detect. The voice echoed again, softer this time, almost intimate. "Phoenix." A shiver ran down her spine. She was not alone. And whatever awaited, the sky itself seemed to whisper. The calm before the storm had ended. The calm of the cruising altitude shattered like glass. Amelia's fingers danced across the controls, adjusting for turbulence that wasn't there. The radar flickered again, but this time it was more pronounced, sharper, a solid presence cutting through the sky. She scanned the instruments, eyes narrowing. That's when it happened. A violent shudder rippled through the aircraft, forcing her back into her seat. Both engines cut out simultaneously. The roar of the turbines died abruptly, leaving the cabin in a strange, hollow silence, broken only by the panicked screams of passengers. Cups of coffee spilled, tumbling onto laps, and a child's toy clattered to the floor. The plane lurched, nose pitching downward for a fraction of a second, then righting itself as Amelia yanked the yoke instinctively. "Both engines are out," Jeremy whispered, voice tight, disbelief coating every syllable. His hands flew over switches, testing each circuit, each throttle, each backup system. How is this possible? Amelia's mind worked at lightning speed, running calculations she had memorized from countless simulations. She could glide the aircraft, but the river, the only safe landing she could see below, was miles away, narrow, lined with jagged rocks and trees. Every second counted. Every passenger's life rested on her ability to perform perfectly. "Cabin crew, brace for possible emergency landing," she said, voice low, controlled, masking the adrenaline racing through her veins. Her eyes darted to the radar. The blip that had haunted her moments ago was closer now, unmistakable. 2 F-22 jets cut through the sky, maintaining a formation that screamed authority and precision. Amelia swallowed hard, realizing that these weren't random planes. They were watching, tracking, calculating, and somehow they knew her. "Phoenix," the voice crackled over the radio, clearer now. One of the F-22 pilots was speaking directly to her. "Status." Amelia's fingers tightened on the yoke. Engines failed, attempting glide, requesting guidance if available. She forced herself to sound calm. Inside, panic surged like a tide, threatening to sweep away every rational thought. 200 people, each life hanging in balance, depended on her to act decisively, to calculate, to survive. In the cabin, screams turned into sobs, prayers, whispered pleas. Flight attendants moved frantically down the aisles, strapping passengers into seats, securing the cabin, their own fear buried under layers of training. Amelia caught glimpses of faces, wide eyes, pale skin, trembling hands, and felt a surge of determination. She would not fail. Not today. The aircraft began to descend rapidly, the ground rushing up to meet them. Amelia adjusted the flaps, calculated wind resistance, weight distribution, and glide angle simultaneously. Sweat stung her eyes, but she refused to blink. She had never felt so exposed, so acutely aware of every movement, every second. She could feel the aircraft as an extension of her own body. Metal, hydraulics, and human will fused into one tense, desperate effort. Through the haze, she could see the river. It gleamed like liquid mercury, slicing through the dense forest below. Narrow, unpredictable, unforgiving. One wrong move and the plane would be torn apart on impact. Yet it was the only hope. Amelia adjusted their descent, calculating the precise angle needed to touch down gently, like a feather on a knife's edge. Then another jolt. A piece of metal on the wing had caught air turbulence, forcing the plane into a dangerous tilt. The passengers screamed anew. The child in 18A pressed his face against the window, eyes wide, clutching his bear like a lifeline. Amelia's stomach dropped, but her hands remained firm, guiding the plane with a steady, almost supernatural precision. Her training, her instincts, her years of secret preparation, every skill she had honed, converged in that singular, terrifying moment. Above them, the F-22s moved with surgical precision, flanking the aircraft, their engines screaming like wolves. Amelia felt the weight of their scrutiny, the invisible pressure of their expectations. She realized then that this wasn't just a test of her piloting, it was a test of everything she had ever been. The voice on the radio called again. "Phoenix, you are clear to glide. Keep heading towards the river. We're monitoring, don't lose focus." Amelia exhaled slowly, letting the words anchor her. She wasn't alone, but the responsibility was still hers. The river drew closer, narrowing like a silver scar through the forest. The plane shuddered, responding to every subtle adjustment she made. Cabin walls trembled. Passengers gripped armrests with white-knuckled intensity. Every heartbeat felt magnified. "Ladies and gentlemen," Amelia said over the intercom, her voice calm but firm, "this is your captain. We are experiencing a temporary technical issue. Please remain seated and strapped in. Follow instructions from our crew. Help is on the way." Her words were meant to reassure, but inside, fear gnawed at the edges of her composure. She could see the trees lining the riverbanks. One miscalculation and the fuselage would tear open, metal splintering, screams amplified by the wind. Yet, strangely, she felt alive in a way she never had before, alive in the purest sense of human will, in the desperate fight between survival and disaster. Seconds stretched like hours. The river approached rapidly. Amelia adjusted the glide, factoring in the plane's weight, the loss of engines, the uneven current of air. Her hands moved instinctively, the aircraft obeying her like a living, trembling creature. Behind her, Jeremy muttered, "I can't believe she's doing this. I can't believe she's doing this." And then a shadow passed across the cockpit window. One of the F-22s had broken formation, diving closer, engines roaring, a silent guardian in the sky. Amelia's pulse quickened. They were not there to harm her, but the weight of their presence was oppressive, a reminder that this moment was being watched, calculated, documented. Every decision, every microsecond was observed. The river rushed closer, its surface reflecting the blinding sun. Amelia tilted the plane, lining the glide path, praying silently that physics and instinct would converge. The first touch of water was tentative, a delicate kiss of metal against liquid. The plane shuddered violently as it skidded along the river, water spraying over windows, soaking passengers. Screams erupted, then turned into shocked gasps as the fuselage stabilized. Amelia held her breath, guiding the plane along the narrow stretch of water. Rocks jutted out like jagged teeth on either side. Trees whipped past in a blur. The F-22s maintained their vigil, slicing through the sky with perfection. She could hear the faint crack of water against metal, the subtle groan of the aircraft responding to her every command. And then, just as the plane seemed to find balance, another jolt shook the cabin. A small wing flap had been damaged. Panic rose again in the passengers' eyes. Amelia's jaw tightened. She had seconds to stabilize before catastrophe. One slip, one miscalculation, and the plane, with its 200 precious souls, would become a tomb. Yet amidst the terror, a singular thought anchored her. She had trained for impossible scenarios, faced risks others could never imagine, and survived. She was Phoenix, named for rebirth, for rising from ashes. And rising she would. The river was moments away. The aircraft teetered on the edge of control, engines silent, 200 lives suspended in midair. Amelia's eyes flicked to the F-22 overhead, the single pilot in the cockpit locking eyes through the glass, silently urging her forward. Her fingers tightened on the controls, and she whispered to herself, almost inaudibly, hold on, we're not done yet." River stretched below like a liquid ribbon, deceptively calm yet lined with treacherous obstacles. Amelia's heart pounded in rhythm with the plane's trembling fuselage. Every second the distance closed between salvation and disaster. She scanned the water, calculating width, current, and approach angle in real time. One false move, one misjudged descent, and the aircraft would meet the jagged rocks that lined its banks. 200 lives rested on her ability to glide with precision few could imagine. "Brace for impact," Amelia shouted over the intercom, though her voice betrayed no fear, only control. Flight attendants sprang into action, strapping passengers in, instructing them to keep calm. The child in 18A buried his face in the stuffed bear, trembling but trusting the calm authority emanating from Amelia's voice. Mothers whispered prayers, fathers gritted their teeth, and teenagers clung to armrests with white-knuckled intensity. The cabin was chaos and calm intertwined, terror tempered by trust. Amelia adjusted the yoke, aligning the plane's descent with the narrow river path. Trees whipped past on either side, their branches clawing at the sky as if warning her. Water sparkled below, deceptively smooth, reflecting sunlight that threatened to blind her. The engines were dead, and without thrust, every movement was amplified. One slight tilt, one miscalculation in wind speed or glide angle could send the plane plummeting into catastrophe. The F-22s hovered above, cutting through the clouds like ghosts. Amelia felt their presence more than she saw them, invisible sentinels silently judging every micro-adjustment. One pilot's voice broke the tense silence over the radio. "Phoenix, steady, we have you." The single word reverberated through the cockpit like both reassurance and warning. They were watching, yes, but they also trusted her, a strange combination that heightened the stakes. Amelia exhaled, centering herself. She had trained for impossible scenarios, but this was unlike anything she had faced. Here, there were no simulations, no emergency drills, just 200 living, breathing souls depending entirely on her instinct and skill. The river rushed closer, narrowing dangerously. Rocks jutted from the water like the jagged teeth of some ancient beast. Amelia tilted the plane slightly, calculating lift, drag, and descent in seconds. She could feel the aircraft's tremors, each vibration a message, each sway a signal she had learned to read through countless hours of practice. Jeremy, beside her, muttered under his breath, "This is insane, she's doing the impossible." Amelia's eyes flicked to the radar, ensuring the F-22s maintained formation, providing guidance without interference. One of them broke off, descending slightly to match her altitude, engines screaming in a terrifying symphony. Her pulse quickened, but she focused on the water below. The river was their only lifeline. Inside the cabin, the passengers held their collective breath. A sudden jolt rocked the plane as the wing caught turbulent air. Cups toppled, a woman screamed, and the child in 18A gasped. Amelia gritted her teeth, forcing her mind to push panic aside. Her training, instincts, and determination converged into a singular, razor-sharp focus. She adjusted flaps, nudged the yoke, and guided the aircraft to a near-perfect glide path. The river approached rapidly, silver and mercurial. Amelia whispered a prayer under her breath, a personal invocation she had never spoken aloud in front of anyone. She couldn't fail. She wouldn't fail. The first touch of water was jarring. The plane skidded violently, spraying passengers with icy river water, rocking side to side like a lifeboat on storm-tossed seas. Screams erupted, but Amelia's calm, authoritative voice cut through the chaos. "Stay seated, stay strapped in, trust me, we'll get through this." Metal groaned under the stress, windows rattled, and water surged against the fuselage. But Amelia held firm, coaxing the plane along the river with a masterful combination of skill and instinct. Each second was an eternity, each adjustment a delicate negotiation with physics itself. Jeremy's hands were white-knuckled, clinging to the panel. "How are you doing this?" he gasped. Amelia didn't answer. She couldn't. Focus demanded all her attention. She monitored the plane's speed, glide angle, and descent, weaving between natural obstacles with the precision of someone who had lived for these exact moments, though secretly, and without ever telling anyone. Through the haze of spray and sunlight, Amelia could see the exit point ahead, a wider stretch of river where the plane could finally slow. She pushed the yoke slightly, banking the fuselage, and felt a faint resistance in the damaged wing. The aircraft shuddered violently, water cascading against the fuselage, spraying passengers in waves. Screams turned into gasps, fear into awe, as the plane responded perfectly to Amelia's commands. The F-22s hovered above, like guardians from another realm. One of them mirrored her movements, providing invisible guidance, their presence a silent assurance that she was not entirely alone. Amelia's pulse thundered, adrenaline coursing, every muscle taut. She could hear the roar of rushing water mingled with the metallic groan of the aircraft. Time slowed. Seconds stretched like hours. Every passenger's life depended on her next move. A sudden jolt nearly threw her from the cockpit. The plane's wing had struck debris floating in the river. Amelia reacted instinctively, tilting the yoke, adjusting flaps, and applying every ounce of strength to steady the glide. The cabin shook, passengers gripped seats in terror, but the aircraft remained aloft. Her heart pounded in her ears. One miscalculation now could spell disaster. "Almost there," she whispered to herself, though she could barely hear her own voice over the chaos. The wider stretch of the river was within reach, offering a chance to bring the plane to a complete stop. Her eyes flicked to Jeremy, who nodded grimly, trusting her beyond words. The F-22s remained in formation, engines screaming like wolves, shadows stretching across the fuselage. The plane touched down again, skimming across the river's surface, water spraying violently. Amelia adjusted her glide, inching forward with painstaking precision. The roar of engines was gone, replaced by the rushing river and the shouts of terrified passengers. Yet through it all, the aircraft remained under her command. Slowly, agonizingly, the plane began to decelerate. The final stretch of water loomed ahead, jagged rocks, shallow banks, and the possibility of a catastrophic halt. Amelia's gaze locked on the river's end. She tilted the plane slightly, coaxing it into alignment, and for the first time allowed herself a fraction of hope. 200 lives, fragile yet precious, were almost safe. She could hear the child in 18A giggle nervously, a sound that cut through the tension like sunlight through storm clouds. She exhaled slowly, but the moment was not yet won. because above her in the sky, the F-22s maintained their vigil, and Amelia knew one thing with certainty. This flight was far from over. Someone knew her name. Someone was watching. And what awaited beyond this river was a reality she could not yet imagine. The river's surface rippled in a deceptive calm, reflecting the morning sun like a sheet of liquid gold. Amelia's hands were slick with sweat, her black uniform damp from the spray, but her eyes remained sharp, scanning the horizon, the banks, and the shadows overhead. The aircraft had come to a precarious stop, resting unevenly in the shallows, its fuselage groaning under the sudden shift in weight. Behind her, passengers clung to each other, shivering, pale and wet, yet alive. 200 lives had been held in the balance, and she had delivered them back to the world. Yet relief was a fragile illusion. Above, the F-22s hovered silently, their silhouettes cutting across the sky like predatory birds. Amelia's pulse quickened. She knew the formation was no accident. These pilots were elite, trained to observe, to judge, to intervene if necessary. But why now? And why call her by name? Her secret call sign, long buried in her military training, had been whispered across the radio, a signal meant only for the most elite eyes and ears. The answer hovered just beyond reach, like the thin wisp of a storm cloud on the horizon. "Status," the voice came again, crisp, controlled, emanating from one of the jets above. Amelia's stomach tightened. She knew the voice not personally but intimately familiar, the cadence of someone trained in her own secret discipline. She felt exposed, yet a strange surge of pride coursed through her. She had been recognized, observed, tested. "Aircraft stable, passengers safe," she replied, keeping her voice steady, masking the unease gnawing at her chest. "But we're grounded here until emergency crews arrive." "Good," the voice said. "But that's only part of the story. Phoenix, we need to speak with you, now." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. Speak with her. Above the river, with 200 civilians just moments from catastrophe. Her mind raced, recalling classified protocols, clandestine simulations, and covert missions she had trained for but never executed in real life. She was good at following orders, at operating in secrecy, at executing impossible maneuvers. But this was different. This was reality, messy and uncontrolled, full of screaming passengers and unpredictable terrain. "Copy that," she replied cautiously. She knew that any misstep could risk everything: her life, her passengers, and the fragile chain of trust she had built in the cockpit over decades of practice. Her eyes flicked to the F-22 above, and for a fleeting second she caught the eye of the pilot in the cockpit, helmet reflective and unyielding. Recognition passed between them, silent but profound. They knew her history, they knew her abilities, but they also knew something she didn't. The emergency crews began arriving, sirens echoing across the valley, their vehicles slicing through the mist like armored fish. Passengers stumbled out, arms clinging to one another, faces wet, eyes wide with disbelief. They were alive, unbelievably, miraculously alive. Amelia exhaled, but she did not relax. The F-22s circled above, watching her every move. She knew this was more than gratitude or protocol. This was surveillance, assessment, a test of skills she could not yet name. Jeremy leaned over, voice barely above a whisper. "Amelia, what's going on up there? Who are they? How do they know your call sign?" She met his gaze, jaw tight. "I don't know, not yet, but we'll find out." Her mind raced through possibilities. Only one explanation fit: someone, somewhere, knew her abilities. They had recognized her, tracked her, and chosen this moment to observe her in real conditions. She felt the weight of destiny pressing against her ribs. Meanwhile, passengers were being escorted to safety. Children clutched parents' hands, elderly passengers leaned on attendants, and the cabin crew moved with disciplined precision, guiding everyone away from danger. Amelia watched from the cockpit hatch, adrenaline still thrumming through her veins. Her senses, sharpened from years of secret training, remained alert. She could feel the subtle vibration of the fuselage, the lingering sway from the river's current, the distant roar of the F-22 engines above. Every detail mattered. Then came the message that made her heart pound. The lead F-22 pilot spoke directly to her once more, voice laced with authority and urgency. "Phoenix, your skills just saved 200 lives, but there's more. We've been tracking you for years. It's time we talk in person. Extraction point coordinates are incoming. Move quickly." Amelia froze. Extraction. She had flown emergency landings, evasive maneuvers, and classified simulations, but the idea of being whisked away by military operatives in full force was another level entirely. Her mind darted through questions. Who had authorized this? Why now? And most importantly, why her? Passengers continued to stagger to safety, oblivious to the tension building in the skis. Amelia took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her own dual lives, the civilian pilot she had become, and the secret operative she had trained to be. And she knew, with a certainty that made her stomach churn, that neither world would ever be the same again. The F-22s' engines roared louder, circling in tighter formations. One jet broke from the pack, descending toward the riverbank, landing with fluid precision that made the helicopter crews nearby pause in admiration. A door opened, and a uniformed officer stepped out, walking toward Amelia's aircraft with purposeful stride. She watched him approach, adrenaline still thrumming, heart hammering. "Phoenix," the officer said, extending a hand. His expression was unreadable, professional, but his eyes betrayed recognition. "We've been waiting for you." Amelia's fingers tightened on the cockpit edge. "Waiting for me?" she asked, voice steady but cautious. "Why, who are you?" The officer's gaze remained firm. "All in due time. But first, we need you to come with us. You've demonstrated something extraordinary, and it's time the world, or at least the right people, understand the full extent of your skills." Her mind raced. The passengers were safe, but the river landing had only opened a door to something far larger, far more dangerous. Above, the F-22s hovered like silent guardians or unseen judges waiting for her next move. Amelia glanced at Jeremy, who nodded subtly, trusting her judgment. She had two choices: stay with the civilians she had saved, or step into the unknown, into a mission she had never anticipated, under the watchful eyes of elite pilots who knew her every move. And as the officer's hand waited for her, Amelia felt the pull of destiny stronger than fear. Her call sign, Phoenix, wasn't just a name. It was a signal, a legacy, a summons to rise from ordinary life into something extraordinary. Her eyes flicked back to the F-22s, engines screaming, shadows dancing across the water, and in that moment, Amelia knew her life had changed forever. She stepped toward the officer, toward the unknown, toward whatever awaited her beyond the riverbank. Because the eyes in the sky had not merely watched her survive, they had marked her. And the true mission, the real danger, was only beginning. Amelia stepped onto the riverbank, her shoes sinking slightly into the muddy soil, water still dripping from her uniform. Her eyes flicked toward the F-22s hovering above, engines slicing through the clear morning sky, their presence both comforting and unnerving. Behind her, the passengers she had saved were being shepherded to safety by emergency crews, their expressions a mixture of shock, relief, and awe. They had no idea what had just happened, or who she really was. Amelia didn't correct them. There wasn't time. The officer who had met her at the riverbank motioned toward a sleek black helicopter waiting nearby. "Board, we move quickly. There's no time for questions." His tone was firm but measured, betraying a hint of urgency that Amelia felt deep in her bones. She glanced back at the river, at the passengers she had saved with every ounce of skill and instinct she possessed. 200 lives, the stakes of the morning, were safe. But her instincts screamed that this was only the beginning. Jeremy fell into step beside her, face pale but resolute. "Amelia, what's happening? Why is this happening?" His voice trembled slightly, betraying the fear he had managed to hide through the river landing. Amelia shook her head. "I don't know yet, but we don't have time, trust me." She climbed into the helicopter, the engine roaring to life beneath her. The officer took the co-pilot seat while Amelia and Jeremy secured themselves. The moment the blades sliced through the air, Amelia felt the familiar thrill of flight, but now it was tainted with uncertainty. The F-22s flanked the helicopter as it lifted, escorting her with precision that sent chills down her spine. The pilots knew her. They had observed her. And somehow, she had been summoned into a world she had never anticipated. As they soared above the landscape, the officer finally spoke. "Phoenix, what you just did the river landing, that wasn't a coincidence. It was a test, and you passed." His words landed like a hammer. Amelia's heart skipped. "Test?" she asked. "Test for what?" He glanced at her, eyes sharp behind mirrored sunglasses. "For this, for everything you've trained for. You've been tracked for years, your skills monitored. The F-22s, the simulations, the secret exercises, all meant to prepare you for a real-world scenario. Today, you proved yourself. But there's more. Much more." Amelia's mind raced. She had trained for emergencies, for impossible scenarios, for life-or-death situations in simulators. But this being observed, measured, summoned was something entirely different. Her pulse quickened as she absorbed the enormity of the revelation. "Why me?" she asked. "Why now?" The officer's expression softened for the briefest moment. "Because you're ready, and because the world needs you. There's a situation unfolding, something far beyond a failed engine or a river landing, something only someone with your skills can handle. You've always been Phoenix, Amelia, but now it's time to live up to that name fully." Jeremy, still seated beside her, whispered, "This is insane. What could be so important that they need you like this?" Amelia didn't answer. She couldn't. She had no idea herself. She felt the helicopter bank sharply, the rotors slicing the wind with ferocious precision. Outside, the mountains passed in a blur, the river below shrinking into the distance. The F-22s maintained formation, vigilant and silent, their engines a constant reminder that Amelia was now part of something bigger than herself, bigger than anything she had imagined. Her thoughts drifted to the 200 passengers she had saved. Would they ever know the full story? Would they ever understand the true extent of what she had accomplished? Probably not. That didn't matter. Amelia's life had always been about precision, about control, about responding when everyone else faltered. And now, she realized, control was a relative term. The real world, the one she was stepping into, was unpredictable, dangerous, and far larger than the cockpit of any commercial airliner. The officer finally handed her a tablet displaying encrypted coordinates and a detailed briefing. Amelia's eyes widened as she scanned the information. An incoming threat, classified at the highest level, capable of catastrophic consequences. It involved national security, advanced technology, and a timeline that left no room for error. She swallowed hard, realizing the magnitude of what lay ahead. This was no simulation. This was reality, and she was the key player. "Phoenix," the officer said, voice cutting through her thoughts, "we've prepared for this moment. The F-22s above will continue to monitor and support you. But the mission, the decisions, the execution, that's on you. Are you ready?" Amelia's pulse thundered. Her mind ran through all the impossible scenarios she had faced in simulations, in training, in secret exercises. She had never failed. She had never faltered. And yet the enormity of this mission pressed down on her like the weight of a mountain. She swallowed hard, straightened in her seat, and nodded. "I'm ready." The officer gave a curt nod. "Good, coordinates locked, extraction point secure. From here, everything you do will determine the outcome. Trust your instincts, trust your training. The world is counting on you." As the helicopter banked toward the first waypoint, Amelia's thoughts returned briefly to the F-22s above. Their presence was reassuring, but also intimidating. She knew they had observed her every move, tracked her every decision. Their eyes in the sky were both a lifeline and a reminder of the expectations she carried. She drew in a deep breath, grounding herself, feeling the calm beneath the adrenaline. She had flown through disaster, guided a plane to safety with nothing but skill and instinct, and now she would rise to whatever came next. The river, now far behind, gleamed faintly in the sunlight. The passengers, safe and unaware of the unfolding drama, had no idea how close they had come to disaster, or how close Amelia was to stepping into a realm that would test every fiber of her being. She thought of the child in 18A, gripping his bear, eyes wide with trust. She had promised safety once. Now she would promise something greater: action, skill, and courage in a world where ordinary rules did not apply. The F-22s tightened formation, one jet braking slightly to signal a secure path ahead. Amelia adjusted the helicopter's trajectory, following the lead, trusting the unseen guidance, her instincts sharpened to a level that few could match. Every vibration, every movement, every sound became data points in a high-stakes calculation that would determine the next moments of her life and the world. And then, through the radio, the voice she had heard before came again. Phoenix mission parameters confirmed. Extraction confirmed. Proceed carefully. Eyes on target. Her heart raced. The term mission had never been spoken in her civilian life. Yet here it was, clear, commanding, inevitable. She glanced at Jeremy, whose eyes reflected awe and fear in equal measure. "Ready?" she asked. He nodded. Amelia took a deep breath, gripping the controls, preparing for what lay ahead. Beyond the river, beyond the mountains, beyond the safety of civilians and the comfort of routine, lay a mission that would challenge her skills, her courage, and her very identity. She had saved lives once. Now she would prove herself to a world that had long been waiting for Phoenix to rise. The helicopter surged forward, cutting through the sky, the F-22s flanking her like ghosts of fate. Amelia's mind was sharp, her focus absolute. One thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same. And somewhere ahead, danger, revelation, and destiny waited, and they were calling her name. The helicopter cut through the sky with surgical precision, rotors slicing the morning air as the F-22s flanked Amelia's flight path like spectral guardians. Below, the mountains rolled away, forests stretching endlessly, rivers glinting faintly in the sunlight. Above, the threat remained invisible, unannounced, yet palpably present. Amelia's pulse hammered in rhythm with the blades, a constant reminder that she was no longer merely a civilian pilot. She was part of something far larger, far more dangerous, and far more secret. Jeremy, seated beside her, was pale and tense. "Amelia, what exactly are we walking into?" he asked, voice tight with anxiety. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the harness. Amelia kept her eyes forward, scanning coordinates on the tablet the officer had provided. "I don't know everything," she admitted. "But I do know this: whatever it is, we need to be ready, and we have no room for mistakes." Below, the extraction point appeared, a covert facility hidden deep in the Rocky Mountains, camouflaged with precision, invisible to any civilian eye. Satellite-level technology alone had detected it, and yet now Amelia's eyes swept over its perimeter, noting every ridge, every shadow, every potential threat. She felt a familiar twinge of anticipation, the kind she had experienced countless times during classified simulations. Only now, the stakes were no longer hypothetical. The helicopter descended toward a concealed landing pad. Sensors beeped softly on the dashboard, alerting Amelia to subtle shifts in terrain and wind currents. Every adjustment was critical. One miscalculation could ruin the landing, jeopardize the mission, or worse, expose them to danger before they even reached the objective. She exhaled slowly, focusing, filtering out the adrenaline that threatened to overwhelm her. Precision was survival. Precision was everything. The F-22s maintained formation overhead, silent but omnipresent. Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that they were more than observers, that at any moment they could intervene or disappear into the sky, leaving her entirely alone. A flicker of doubt crossed her mind. Could she truly trust them? She had trained to rely on skill, instinct, and preparation, not the judgments of unknown pilots hovering like ghosts. And yet, instinct told her to trust, at least for now. The helicopter touched down with careful precision, skimming the pad, rotors stirring dust and debris into a swirling vortex. Amelia's hands moved instinctively, guiding the craft until it came to a complete stop. Below, armed personnel moved swiftly, securing the perimeter with practiced efficiency. The atmosphere was tense, every movement deliberate, every step measured. Amelia felt the weight of surveillance in every glance, every shadow, every reflected light across the mountainside. An officer approached immediately, clipboard in hand, expression unreadable. "Phoenix," he said, voice measured. "Your presence was expected. You've already demonstrated your skill, but what comes next will test you in ways you cannot anticipate. Are you prepared?" Amelia's jaw tightened. "I don't have a choice," she said. Her voice was steady, though her mind raced. She had no illusions about the danger that awaited. Every mission she had trained for had been theoretical. This was real. Every decision carried consequences, not just for her, but for the world beyond these mountains. Inside the facility, technology hummed with quiet authority. Screens displayed satellite feeds, encrypted communications, and schematics of systems she had never seen in her civilian life. Amelia's eyes widened as she scanned the room. The magnitude of the operation and the potential threat became clear almost immediately. This was not a simple rescue. This was a complex, high-stakes mission with ramifications that could ripple across continents. A briefing officer approached, voice low and urgent. "Phoenix, we've been tracking anomalous signals for months. Advanced systems potentially compromised. We need someone with your skills to assess, intervene, and neutralize if necessary. Time is critical. We've run simulations, but only you can execute this in the real world." Amelia nodded, absorbing the information. Her pulse quickened, but she forced herself to remain calm. Every fiber of her training demanded focus. Every scenario she had rehearsed, from evasive maneuvers to high-speed intercepts, now converged into one critical mission. She felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Suddenly, alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the control panels, casting ominous shadows across the room. The team's movements became urgent, coordinated, precise. Amelia felt a surge of adrenaline, her instincts kicking into overdrive. The threat was immediate. The simulations were over. The real world had arrived, chaotic, unpredictable, and unforgiving. "Phoenix," the officer said sharply, "we've detected a breach in the system. Someone is attempting to intercept critical data. We need you to act immediately." Amelia's hands moved automatically, following the tablet's instructions, overriding locks, assessing the threat vectors. Her mind worked at lightning speed, piecing together patterns, calculating outcomes. Every second counted. Behind her, Jeremy watched, awe and fear mingling in his expression. She could sense his worry, but there was no time for reassurance. The threat was real, and it was close. The F-22s above transmitted encrypted updates, their voices calm, professional, yet tinged with urgency. "Phoenix, situation escalating. Unauthorized signal detected. Probability of compromise high. Proceed with caution." The words were measured, almost clinical, yet each syllable carried a weight that pressed on her like gravity. Amelia adjusted systems, rerouted channels, isolated compromised nodes. Her fingers flew over the controls with the confidence of someone who had faced impossible scenarios before, who had guided a massive aircraft to safety without engines, and now faced a digital battlefield with equal stakes. She felt the rush of fear and exhilaration intertwine, heightening her senses to a near hypersensitive state. The alarm intensified. Screens flashed critical warnings. Every movement, every decision, every calculation mattered. Amelia's mind filtered the chaos, isolating variables, predicting outcomes, and executing solutions with precision. She could feel the presence of the F-22s above, the officers around her, and yet she was alone in her decisions, the fulcrum upon which the mission balanced. Seconds stretched into minutes, each one a test of skill, courage, and instinct. And then, as abruptly as it began, the alarm ceased. The red lights dimmed, replaced by steady green indicators. Systems were stabilized. The breach had been contained. Amelia exhaled slowly, but the momentary relief was tempered by awareness. The mission was far from over. This was only the beginning. The officers around her nodded in acknowledgement, respect in their eyes. "Well done, Phoenix," the briefing officer said quietly. "You've proven yourself, But the real challenge begins now. Are you ready? Amelia's gaze lifted, meeting the officer's eyes. She felt a mixture of exhaustion, exhilaration, and anticipation. Her life had changed irrevocably. The calm and chaos of the past hours had merged into a singular reality. She was no longer a civilian pilot. She was Phoenix, operative, guardian, an agent in a mission whose scope she was only beginning to comprehend. Above, the F-22s hovered, shadows against the morning sky, silent yet watchful. Amelia knew that every move she made next would be observed, assessed, and judged. Every decision could tip the balance between success and catastrophe. And somewhere, deep in the complex web of threats and secrets, the true adversary waited, unseen, calculating, and deadly. Amelia took a deep breath, grounding herself. Chaos and calm had collided, leaving her poised at the edge of the unknown. She had navigated impossible odds once. She would do it again. Because the world, fragile, beautiful, and unaware, was counting on Phoenix to rise. And rise she would. The facility hummed with tense energy, a pulse beneath the fluorescent lights that seemed to echo through every corridor. Amelia's hands remained steady on the tablet, her mind working in hyperspeed, yet every instinct screamed that something larger was unfolding. The digital breach had been contained, but the underlying threat remained calculated, deliberate, and still hidden. She knew instinctively that today was not only a test of skill, but a test of survival. The officer who had guided her into the facility approached once more, his expression unreadable. "Phoenix," he said, voice low but firm, "the data we intercepted indicates someone inside our systems is working with outside forces. We don't yet know their identity or their objectives, but the patterns are deliberate, precise, almost surgical." Amelia's pulse quickened. The word inside carried a weight that no one could ignore. It was one thing to face threats in the open sky, to glide an aircraft through impossible odds. It was another entirely to realize that the enemy was not only unseen but could be sitting beside you, manipulating every move, every calculation. Her eyes flicked to Jeremy, whose pale face reflected the same unease she felt. "Who could infiltrate this?" Jeremy whispered. "This place, it's supposed to be secure." Amelia shook her head. "That's the problem. Whoever it is, they know the protocols. They've trained like we have, or they've studied us. Either way, we need to move fast before they act." The F-22s hovered overhead, an almost ghostly presence. Amelia had long since stopped fearing them, but their silence now carried an almost ominous weight. She felt the eyes of the pilots through the sky, monitoring every detail, every decision. Somewhere up there, someone who knew her, who called her Phoenix, was watching, and that person held answers or danger she could not yet see. The officer handed her another tablet. "This is the target. Coordinates lead to an outpost outside the facility, heavily shielded. Our intel suggests the insider is coordinating from there. You'll need to extract critical data, neutralize the threat, and return safely. Time is tight. The extraction team is on standby, but this is your mission." Amelia's mind raced, piecing together variables, calculating risk. The facility behind her was a bastion of safety, but out there, beyond its walls, lay uncertainty, danger, and the unknown. She felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, tempered by clarity. She had survived the river, navigated impossible odds, and controlled chaos itself. This would be no different, only deadlier. Jeremy leaned close. "You're really going out there?" Amelia's gaze was sharp. "If we want to stop whoever is manipulating everything, yes, I have no choice, and neither do we." Minutes later, she was suited in tactical gear, every movement precise, practiced. The helicopter waiting outside was sleek, engineered for speed and stealth. Amelia climbed aboard, Jeremy beside her, both strapped in and ready. The F-22s flanked them once more as the rotors lifted into the crisp mountain air. The journey was silent but charged with tension. Below, forests blurred into shadows, rivers became narrow threads, and the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long fingers of orange light across the landscape. Amelia's mind raced through contingencies, every possible outcome, every scenario. She had trained for this, but the stakes were exponentially higher now. This was real. Lives, national security, and the balance of power all depended on her next moves. The outpost emerged from the shadows, camouflaged against the rocky terrain. Sensors flared briefly, then quieted. Amelia's pulse quickened. Inside, someone was waiting. Someone who had manipulated systems, breached protocols, and orchestrated chaos with precision. The air was thick with danger, yet she moved with calm efficiency, every muscle taut, every decision deliberate. The helicopter landed in a hidden clearing, rotors stirring dust and debris into a vortex that mirrored the turbulence in Amelia's mind. Armed personnel secured the perimeter as she and Jeremy exited, moving swiftly toward the outpost. Inside, the corridors were dark, lit only by the glow of monitors and faint overhead lights. The atmosphere was tense, every sound amplified, every shadow suspect. Amelia's instincts screamed. There was movement ahead. A figure, silhouetted against a bank of monitors, paused, then turned. Her heart froze for a fraction of a second, recognition slammed into her like a physical force. It was someone she knew, someone she never expected. "Phoenix," the figure said, voice cold, precise, unmistakable. "I wondered how long it would take for you to show up." Amelia's mind raced. The insider was not unknown. This was personal. The enemy had been observing, learning, anticipating her every move. And now, standing mere feet away, they revealed themselves, confident, poised, lethal. The figure moved with fluidity, almost superhuman, a subtle threat in every gesture. Amelia assessed rapidly, calculating angles, exits, and the vulnerabilities of the environment. This was no ordinary combat scenario. This was a battle of intellect, reflexes, and nerve. Every second mattered. "You shouldn't have come," the insider continued, a slight smirk playing across their face. "But then again, I knew you would. Phoenix always rises." Amelia's pulse surged. She had faced impossible odds before, the river landing, engine failures, life-and-death crises in the air. But this was different. The enemy was visible, personal, and intimately aware of her skills. There was no hiding, no maneuvering. Every move she made would be anticipated, countered. "Then it's good that I anticipated you," Amelia said, voice steady, calm, belying the firestorm of adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Because the world doesn't end here. Not on my watch." The figure's smirk widened. "We'll see." A sudden alarm blared, cutting through the tense standoff. Sensors lit up. The insider's hand moved toward a control panel, eyes flashing with intent. Amelia's mind calculated possibilities, contingencies, escape vectors. Every instinct, every training module, every impossible scenario she had faced was now active in one synchronized focus. The F-22s above transmitted a faint, encrypted signal. "Phoenix, situation critical. Extraction in T-2 minutes. Move carefully." Amelia knew time was the ultimate enemy now. She had seconds to neutralize the threat, secure the data, and survive. Every step, every breath, every thought became a calculated equation of probability, speed, and precision. And then, with a sudden surge, the confrontation began. Amelia lunged, instinct guiding every move. The insider reacted immediately, matching her step for step. The fight was a blur, rapid, precise, lethal. Monitors shattered, alarms echoed, shadows danced across the walls. Amelia felt the weight of her own skill, honed over years, against an opponent who had anticipated her every tactic. The seconds stretched, stretching, elongating into what felt like eternity. And yet, amidst the chaos, clarity emerged. Amelia moved with a singular focus. Protect the world, protect the mission, protect the name Phoenix. Every strike, every block, every maneuver was executed with precision born of experience, instinct, and courage. Finally, after an agonizingly tense exchange, Amelia seized control, neutralizing the insider's access, securing critical data, and holding her ground. Her chest heaved, sweat and adrenaline mixing, but she did not falter. The enemy had been contained for now. Outside, the F-22s hovered, engines screaming like banshees, observing, assessing, ready to intervene if needed. Amelia exhaled, realizing the battle had been won, but the war was far from over. She turned toward Jeremy, eyes blazing with determination. "We did it, but this is just the beginning." Outpost was silent now, the immediate danger contained, but Amelia's chest heaved with the intensity of what had just occurred. The F-22s hovered above, engines droning, a silent acknowledgement of her victory and a reminder that her mission was far from over. Every eye was on her, watching, waiting, evaluating. And in that moment, she felt the full weight of her identity, Phoenix, a name she had carried in secret, now realized in action, in life-or-death decisions, in courage beyond ordinary measure. Jeremy leaned close, voice barely audible over the rotors of the helicopter now waiting for them. "Amelia, we did it. Are we done?" She shook her head. "Not yet. This was only phase 1. We neutralized the immediate threat, but the enemy's reach, it's larger than we realized. Someone orchestrated this, someone powerful, and they've been watching us from the shadows." Her fingers tightened around the tablet, scanning the encrypted data they had secured from the insider's system. The patterns, the coordinates, the coded messages, everything pointed to a network of operations designed to destabilize, manipulate, and exploit. And only she had the skills to stop it. The officer who had guided them approached, his gaze solemn. "Phoenix, the intel you recovered confirms what we suspected. This operation isn't isolated. There's a network trained, resourceful, and willing to strike anywhere. You've proven yourself today, but the world doesn't pause. We need you at the center of our response." Amelia's pulse quickened, but she did not flinch. She had faced impossible odds before: the river landing, engine failures, the outpost confrontation, and she had prevailed. "Then we take them down, methodically, precisely. No mistakes." Her voice carried authority, the certainty of someone who had faced fear and mastered it. The helicopter lifted off, carrying Amelia and Jeremy toward a temporary command center, while the F-22s continued to flank them, vigilant and unwavering. Below, the mountains blurred, the sun dipping further, painting the sky in streaks of crimson and gold. Amelia allowed herself a brief glance outside. The world remained unaware of the chaos that had just unfolded, unaware of the lives she had saved, the enemy she had neutralized, and the storm still gathering. Inside the command center, screens displayed live feeds from satellites, drones, and ground intelligence. Amelia's fingers moved swiftly, coordinating movements, analyzing data, predicting enemy actions. Every decision was critical. Every second could tip the balance between global security and catastrophe. She felt the familiar thrill of high-stakes operation, the adrenaline, the clarity, the razor-sharp focus. "Phoenix," the officer said, voice steady, "we've confirmed multiple nodes of threat. Locations span continents. But your actions today have disrupted their plans, bought us critical time. We need you to lead the strike teams. Your instincts, your precision, your ability to anticipate the enemy, that's what can turn the tide." Amelia nodded. She felt the gravity of the responsibility, but also the clarity of purpose. This was what she had trained for. This was what her skills, honed in secret, were meant to accomplish, and she was ready. As night fell, Amelia coordinated teams, guided operations, and oversaw the dismantling of the enemy network. Her mind raced through every detail: contingencies, backup plans, hidden traps, and potential counterattacks. She moved with the precision of a surgeon, each action deliberate, each decision measured. The F-22s remained in the sky, silent guardians, their presence both reassurance and reminder of the stakes. Hours passed, but Amelia remained focused, undeterred by fatigue. Her training, her instinct, and her courage carried her through. And then, finally, the last node was neutralized, the final threat contained. The network, once poised to destabilize and destroy, had been dismantled through skill, strategy, and unwavering determination. Amelia exhaled, allowing herself a moment to breathe. Around her, the team acknowledged the success, a mixture of relief, admiration, and exhaustion on their faces. Jeremy, still close by, finally smiled, awe and respect mingling in his expression. You really are Phoenix," he said softly. She allowed herself a small smile, feeling the weight of the name settle fully upon her. Phoenix, the one who rose from impossible situations, who navigated chaos, who protected the lives of countless others. The river landing, the F-22 observation, the outpost confrontation, every moment had led to this realization. She was not just a pilot, not just a civilian, not just someone who followed orders. She was the fulcrum on which life, security, and hope balanced. The officer approached once more, his expression unreadable but his voice carrying unspoken respect. "You've done the impossible today. Not only have you saved lives, but you've also prevented what could have been a global crisis. Phoenix, you've risen fully into your role. The world may never know your name, but the impact of your actions will be felt for generations." Amelia nodded, absorbing the weight of his words. She felt exhaustion in her bones, adrenaline slowly fading, replaced by the profound awareness of what had been accomplished. And yet she also knew the truth. This was not the end. The world would always have threats, challenges, and crises. But now she had proven to herself, to the world, to those watching in the shadows, that she could rise to meet them. Outside, the F-22s broke formation, engines fatting into the night. Amelia watched them disappear into the stars, a silent acknowledgement of her triumph and a reminder that her life, her mission, and her identity would never be the same. Jeremy turned to her, eyes wide with admiration. "So, what happens now?" Amelia looked out at the horizon, the first hints of dawn touching the edges of the mountains. "Now," she said softly, voice steady, "we stay ready, because Phoenix never rests, and the world always needs someone to rise." A faint smile tugged at her lips, a mixture of relief, pride, and anticipation. The impossible had been achieved. Lives had been saved, threats neutralized. And yet the sky, the shadows, the world itself, it waited, unpredictable, challenging, and full of possibilities. Amelia felt it all, fully alive, fully present, fully Phoenix. As the command center lights dimmed and the city outside began to stir with the oblivious rhythm of ordinary life, Amelia allowed herself a single moment of reflection. The name Phoenix, whispered through radios, observed from F-22s, recognized by insiders and operatives, was no longer a secret. It was a reality she had earned, a legend forged in crisis, courage, and skill. And somewhere in the sky above, the echoes of that name, Phoenix, resonated, a signal to those who watched, those who waited, and those who would rise alongside her when the next challenge inevitably came. Because Amelia had learned something essential. Life is unpredictable, danger is constant, and hope is fragile. But one person, one skill, one courage-fueled decision can tilt the scales, change the course of events, and save lives in ways the world will never fully see. Phoenix had risen,